Hey everybody, welcome back to our series on the works and words of Jesus. Today we're looking at our fourth miracle, and it's the miracle where Jesus calms the storm. This event shows up in all of the synoptic gospels, so it's in Matthew, and it's in Mark, and it's in Luke. But Mark actually gives us the most detail, and the way he recalls this account is just amazing. Let's go ahead and read this text together. We find it in Mark chapter 4, and it starts in verse 35. Let's read it together. It goes like this. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. He said to them, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" All right, so this account shows us Jesus' incredible power over nature itself. Let's start by looking here in verse 35. Verse 35 says this. It says, "On that day." Well, which day are we talking about? Well, Mark has been telling us in chapter 4 about how Jesus had been teaching a large crowd of people. It was a large crowd, and so he was actually standing in a boat preaching to people who are on the shore. So it's that day. Jesus has been teaching all day, and then Mark gives us a time marker. And that really adds some important detail to the story. It says, when evening had come. As we study these narrative accounts, it's helpful to look at the details about the setting and the details about the character. Well, what we learn about the setting is that it's nighttime. It's evening, and then they start traveling. Now, I'm from Iowa, and so I don't have a lot of experience of ocean or traveling in a boat. But I do know this, that being out in the middle of a body of water when it's pitch black dark outside can be a little bit unnerving. That's the setting. It's evening, and they're starting their journey across to the other side. That's what Jesus said. Let us go across to the other side. Which is the other side? Well, it's to the east side. Capernaum's kind of to the north on the Sea of Galilee. They're going to go across to the eastern shore. And they're going to make this journey at night. Now, they're experienced fishermen, and this is their home. They grew up on the Sea of Galilee, these guys. And yet, it's night. Verse 36 says this, that they're leaving the crowd. Notice the theme of crowds. In the account of Jesus healing the paralyzed man, he's teaching, and it's just the home is filled with people. There's no room. And then in the feeding on the 5,000, the miracle that we looked at, there's 5,000 people. And so you really get the sense that there are crowds and crowds of people. Well, Jesus has been teaching the crowds all day, and now he's ready to leave. He's ready to leave the crowds and have some time in a more isolated place. It says that they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. Interesting little detail. Perhaps that means that he's been teaching in the boat all day, and the idea isn't that they go into shore and pack up. It's just that from where they are, they say, "All right, let's head." And so, just as he is, after a day of preaching, a day of work, they leave. Now, it's interesting that they're not alone. They're not alone. It's not just their boat. It says other boats were with him. And so there's a couple of boats that are traveling across the sea at nighttime. Then it says this. It really starts to get interesting here. Verse 37, and a great windstorm arose. The Sea of Galilee was and is known for intense storms coming suddenly. And that was the case in Jesus' day as well. And here we find a great windstorm arose. This word great is really important because it shows up 3 times in this little account. There was a great windstorm here in verse 37. And then if you look at verse 39, it says this, that there was a great calm. So there's a great windstorm, there's a great calm. And then last, in verse 41, it says there's a great fear. So that's an interesting little word that keeps showing up, and I think it's intentional. Great windstorm, great calm, and it ends with a great fear. This is a serious moment. These guys are used to storms. This is the home court, as it were. This is where the guys grew up, and they were fishermen, some of the disciples, but this is serious. The waves, notice this, are breaking into the boat. That's not a scenario where, maybe in a couple moments we're going to have some trouble we should be worried about. The danger's now. Matthew's account says that they were being swamped. Luke, as he gives this account, says that they were in great danger. And you see that the boat was already filling up. So the disciples, they're not overestimating the problem here. They're not wrong. They're in serious trouble. Serious trouble. Jesus is going to do something amazing. But at the moment, notice what's happening. There's this great trouble. They're almost about to die. The boat is about to sink. And where is Jesus? He's asleep. He's asleep on the cushion. Jesus has had a full day of teaching the parables, and here he is asleep. He's not worried. It strikes me as similar to the feeding of the 5,000, where it has that little note that Jesus knew what he was about to do. Jesus isn't concerned. He's in control of the situation. I like these little details about how he's asleep on a cushion, where he's sleeping. There's other boats. One commentator put it this way, that these are details that eyewitnesses would have seen. They're included here, not just because someone's making up a story. It's because these are eyewitness accounts. And Mark is telling us an accurate history. The boat is filling up. And so frantically, they wake Jesus up and they say to him something interesting. First, notice, teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? Their concern isn't just, our boat might break. They're worried we're going to lose our very lives. And so this is serious. This is serious. But notice what they say. Do you not care? What a thing to say to Jesus. Don't you care? Here we have this problem. We're about to die. Don't you care? I think sometimes we feel the same thing. Have you ever felt this before? Have you ever been in a scenario where Jesus was allowing suffering in your life, and you call out to him and say, Jesus, don't you care? Don't you care? The problem I'm facing, it's about to overwhelm me. Does Jesus care? Yes, he cares. The Bible says that Christ demonstrates his love to us, that while we're sinners, he died for us. And so, yes, Jesus cares. But sometimes maybe we feel the same thing. Don't you care? Jesus here is kind of being rebuked by the disciples. Teacher, do you not care? There's maybe some structure here. It's like there's 3 rebukes. So here we have It's like, here's rebuke number 1. The disciples are rebuking Jesus. Wake up, don't you care? But then Jesus actually turns and he rebukes the storm, and then he rebukes the disciples. So watch how this works. Here we have kind of rebuke number 2, where Jesus rebukes the wind and the sea. 39, he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, and then Mark's account actually gives us the very words that Jesus says. Peace, or hush, be still. Jesus is speaking not with hopeful words, but with authoritative words. Peace, be still. And what happens? And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And so you noticed earlier there's a great windstorm, and now there's a great calm. I love this. I mean, just imagine this. Just picture yourself there. Just picture the noise of this. You hear the waves crashing on the boat, and wind is loud. Wind is very loud. And Jesus says, peace, be still, and instantly it's quiet. Instantly it's calm. What an amazing thing. So the disciples rebuke Jesus, and then Jesus rebukes the storm, and it stops. And then there's kind of a third rebuke here, and we see it in verse 40. Jesus rebukes the disciples. He said to them, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" Jesus rebukes the disciples. Notice the central theme of faith. It comes up so often here in the miracles because what Jesus is looking for is faith. Then and now, what Jesus is looking for is that people would come to him in faith and trust and count on him to save them. Have you still no faith? That's the third rebuke. Now, here's what's really interesting to me. There's in these miracle accounts, what you often find are you see a theme of faith, and then you see so that there's either Jesus is commending someone's faith, or there's a lack of faith in this account. Then there's the miracle, and then there's the response, and that's what we get here in verse 41. There's the response of the disciples, and here's where we get the third great. You might expect there to be great rejoicing or great relief or great gratitude, but instead what you find is this. There was great fear. The disciples now are terrified. The storm stops, and then they're filled with fear. Why would they be afraid? Here's why. Who is in our boat? These guys, I mean, the storm is terrifying enough, but then here's a man sitting across from them who simply speaks to nature and says, peace be still, and instant calm. And they're terrified. They're filled with great fear. And this is the key question. See, this is part of why Mark is telling us the story. He wants you and I to be asking this same question. As someone reads the book of Mark, this is the question you're supposed to ask. Who is this? And the answer, of course, is Jesus. And the thing that Jesus is looking for in his disciples is the very thing he's looking for in us. Will we believe in him? Will we trust him when we face difficult problems ourselves? All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us in our series here on the works and the words of Jesus. And we'll see you again next time.